This week, I want to change things up a little. I want to talk about the story of Romulus and Remus and how they founded the city of Rome. Now, it's not really history, it's more of a myth or a urban legend, if you will. But I mean, the people of the time, they really did believe that this actually happened. So in that sense, it kind of counts as history. But nonetheless, this is a very interesting story about two twin brothers who went through a lot and ended up founding the city of Rome. Welcome to Vlogs of Knowledge. If you're a new viewer to the show, well, first of all, welcome. I do hope that you enjoy your stay here. And I just want to say that you're going to quickly learn to know that I always like to provide some historical context to whatever I'm talking about. That way you get some background information as to what's going on, what year is it, what's going on in the society, what sort of historical context are we in, and also most importantly, why the characters are doing what they're doing. This is a myth that was written around the 3rd century BC, or so historians say. But the actual story takes place a little bit earlier in the 8th century BC in a city called Alba Longa in what is now known as modern Italy. The original king of Alba Longa, Numitor, had his power taken away by his younger evil brother Amulius. Now Amulius, he was the jealous type. He was always jealous that his brother was the king and not him. And ever since he was a little kid, he always plotted to find a way to take his brother's power away. Since a king's power is usually passed down from father to son, Amulius literally had no other choice but to kill every single one of Numitor's male offspring. This would prevent any one of them from potentially taking the power back when they come of age. But that wasn't all. Numitor also had a wife, and what can a wife do? Well, she can have kids, which would be a problem for Amulius. But Amulius was nice, he didn't kill the wife, instead he made her become a vestal virgin, which meant that she could no longer have kids or she would be killed. So every single one of the male offsprings has been killed and the wife became a vestal virgin. Problem solved, right? Not quite, because she had a kid. She had twins actually, Romulus and Remus, the heroes of our story. But these were not just normal kids. In fact, they weren't even Numitor's kids. They were divine kids. They were kids of the Roman god Mars. It is believed, at least according to the myth, that the Roman god Mars personally went and impregnated the wife so that she could give birth to the twins, because they were important for the story. This was a problem for Amulius, and when he found out about the twins' birth, he wanted to have them killed just like all the other sons. But these were divine kids. You have to think twice about having them killed, because they're protected by the gods. Amulius, he was smart and he also feared the gods. He was afraid that if he killed the kids directly, maybe with a knife or a dagger, the gods would be angry at him. And instead, he thought, well, what if we kill the kids naturally by water or by fire or one of the other elements? Then the gods might not be so angry with me. So he went and ordered a servant to go and kill the kids, more specifically to drown them in the nearby river. The servant, when he got there, he found himself unable to kill the kids. I guess he had a conscience. Instead, he built them a wooden carriage and let the river take them wherever it wanted. Now, since the boys were divine kids, the gods were not just gonna let them die. That would have been the end of the myth. And of course, that's not the end of the myth. Something happened. Luckily, there was a tree in which a branch was over the river that the carriage got stuck in. And while they were stuck, they were discovered by a she-wolf, a female wolf. Now the wolf, instead of eating the boys like any other wolf would, she took them and began to feed them. And this scene is the one that is most represented when you're talking about Romulus and Remus in art, whether it be sculpture, painting, or just pictures. The wolf then raised them for several years, and the boys, they learned how to eat like wolves, they learned how to walk like wolves, they behaved like wolves. They pretty much were wolves. What else do you expect if you're going to be raised by wolves? You are going to become a wolf. It was only after a few years that they were discovered by a local shepherd. The local shepherd saw the boys with the wolves and he was worried. What would you do if you saw two boys with a bunch of wolves? You would be worried. You would try to take the boys away, or you might run if you're afraid of wolves. I would run because I'm afraid of wolves. The shepherd then took the boys and quickly realized that these boys were like wolves. They had trouble being human. But after a few years, they managed to get back in touch with their human side. The boys grew up to become shepherds of their own, and they would help their adoptive father in the field. And everything would have been fine if it wasn't for this one day where they met two other shepherds of the evil king Amulius. The boys always had that wolf instinct in them, which you're gonna see plays an important role in this myth. Now they got a fight with these two other shepherds of the evil king, and one of the boys, Remus, was captured and brought back to the king as a prisoner. Both the evil king Amulius and his older brother Numitor sensed that something was up with the kid. He looked really familiar, but they couldn't quite place their finger on it. Meanwhile, the brother Romulus got a bunch of supporters and organized a mission to go and rescue his brother. The mission was successful, they rescued Remus, and bonus points, they also managed to kill the evil king Amulius and restore the power back to the original king Numitor. All's well that ends well. Except, not really. The heroes that they were now, they were offered the crown of Alba Longa. They were offered to become kings, but they chose not to. Instead, they wanted to build their own city, and what better place to build your own city than where they were found by the she-wolf. I mean, this was the place where everything got started. When they got there, they were faced with a problem. There were two hills on which you could build a city. And unfortunately, one brother wanted one hill while the other brother wanted the other hill, and he couldn't really come to an agreement. Now, since the boys were raised by wolves and always had that wolf instinct in them, you kinda know where this is gonna go. They fought, they quarreled, they even asked the gods for help, but they couldn't come to a decision. Eventually, they just decided that both were gonna build their own city. Tensions grew between the brothers and they eventually became rivals, regularly mocking each other's cities. One day, Remus goes over to his brother's city and sees that the walls are a little bit too short. He then begins mocking the walls, saying that these walls are useless. I mean, if you're gonna have a city, you might as well have high walls to prevent other people from going in. And he proceeds to jump over the walls to show just how useless they are. And that perhaps was his biggest mistake. When Romulus the brother saw that, in a moment of anger and humiliation, most likely because of his wolf upbringing, he took a dagger and he stabbed and killed his brother. I mean, it's a Roman myth that had to happen. Romulus was now the only brother left and the only one building a city. He eventually named the city Rome because of his name, and he brought in people, he formed a government, he formed a senate, and he really founded Rome. But there was a problem. The people that he was bringing into the city were criminals, runaway slaves, or fugitives, and most of these people were men. There was a shortage of women. And since we're in the 8th century BC, let me ask you a question. What do you do if you have a village that has a lot of men and a shortage of women? Do you A, go to nearby villages and take away their women? Or B, actually forget B and forget C and forget D? This was a trick question and they did A. That's what they did. They distracted the men, and while the men were distracted watching a show or something, they took the woman and they brought them back to Rome. They raped them, they married them, and all that good stuff that ancient history people do. The nearby villages, they were angry, and I mean, it makes sense, all of their women were gone. So they got together, formed an army, and went to attack Rome. And this would have been a problem for Rome except for the fact that somehow Rome won the war, and this was really Rome's first big victory under Romulus. Rome then had many years of peace, prosperity, and growth, and would eventually become the capital to one of the biggest and most influential empires to have ever existed, the Roman Empire. Oh, and as for Romulus, he eventually died. Even though he was a demigod, even though he was the son of a god, he was still a mortal. Now, his death differs across various sources. Some people say that he just disappeared randomly, while other people say that he ascended to the heavens to become a god himself. We'll never really know. So even though this is a myth and didn't really happen, some historians believe that there may be some truth to it. I mean, maybe this is based on two actual brothers who really did found the city of Rome. And plus, this myth takes place in the 8th century BC, which according to historians is around the time that Rome would have actually been built, so maybe there's something there. Even if it isn't true, it's still a great story, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I love sharing it with you. So leave me a comment, what was your favorite part of the story? Did you hear the story before? Did you hear a different version? I would love to know, and trust me, I'm gonna read every single one of your comments. So that being said, my name has been Darius Cosden. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will see you all next week. Oh, and before I end this video, I just want to introduce a new concept, something that I want to try out. Basically, you guys come here every week, you watch my videos, hopefully till the end, and I want to find a way to give back to you guys. So what I thought I could do was to feature one of you guys as a sort of fan of the week type of thing. Basically, what I'm going to do is at the end of every video, on the end card, I'm going to feature one of your comments as a fan of the week. All you have to do to enter is on the previous video, you just have to leave a comment, start a discussion or something, like just be active in the community, and I'm gonna go and personally pick one of these comments and feature you in the next week. Now, there's no really criteria for the comments. I mean, it's gonna be basically whatever I like, whatever I feel in the moment, but basically some guidelines is just start a discussion, like start something. You know, I always ask questions at the end of my videos, I try to at least, so answer them, start a discussion, and maybe you might be featured in next week. So you're gonna see the featured comment of this week, the fan of this week right now.